all these slave masters posing on your dollar.
To many, the United States of America is a Christian nation, even though our Constitution does not mention any state religion, nor does it reference any particular God. At the end of the day, many Christians just want to validate their worldview through the authority of the state. This is completely antithetical to what our system of government is: a constitutional republic with elected representatives. We are not a monarchy or a theocracy, despite what many religious fanatics think or want. Now, more than ever, America needs to ground itself in something called the Doctrine of Religious Restraint. In its basic sense, the doctrine of religious restraint is that a citizen of a liberal democracy may support the implementation of a coercive law, L, just in case he reasonably believes himself that have a plausible secular justification for L, which he is prepared to offer in political discussion. The DRR is ultimately a moral constraint and applies to all citizens within the liberal democracy. While the restraint does not need to be enforced through state coercion or law, citizens who care about their country would practice it by its virtue alone. The DRR allows for the use of religious views when it comes to the implementation of coercive laws, but requires that they reasonably believe that they have some plausible secular rationale for each of the coercive laws that they support, which they are prepared to offer in any political discussion. Let's use the doctrine of religious restraint through the lens of abortion, since it's still a moral question that hasn't been decided by law. Let's say Paul is against abortion. He believes that God creates life at conception, and anything done to that life would be against his God's views. Greg is for abortion. He believes that the government should offer protection to fetuses when they have some sort of ability to have consciousness. Both Paul and Greg live in a liberal democratic society. Greg does not believe in Paul's God, so Paul's reasoning cannot effectively persuade Greg. Is it fair to hold Greg to the same principles of Paul's religious beliefs in this society? I personally would say no. Under a liberal democratic society, the entire point is to create a functioning society through representation, even for the minority. So even if Paul's religion was the majority, his reasoning still does not justify forcing Greg to adhere to that belief. For Paul to meet the requirements of the doctrine of religious restraint, he could say that he believes human life begins at conception and that all human life deserves the state's protections. While his belief may be grounded in his religious morals, the secular reasoning provided meets Greg on a level playing field. Regardless of Paul's religious beliefs, he has provided a secular argument that Greg must contend with. The question now becomes when the state should protect human life rather than Paul's God told me so. Even if Paul and Greg both believed in the same God and practiced Christianity, what if they were in a different denomination? What if Greg's religious beliefs allowed abortion but not Paul's? How can they decide what coercive law should be passed then? The doctrine of religious restraint provides a path forward for both to go beyond the "my God is more right than your God" rhetoric. There are Christian denominations that do not believe humans have enough of a divine spark to even cause change. They vote knowing that God has already chosen the victor. They do not believe that they have the will to change aspects outside of their own doing. So voting really doesn't matter to them. It is God's will regardless. These individuals' religious beliefs clash with the ideas of a representative democracy. How can a democratic institution work if its citizens do not believe that they can change anything? What's the point? The doctrine of religious restraint defeats this argument because it forces them to contend with their own inaction in the political realm. This belief is also weird when they get the president that they wanted because they say that's a part of God's plan. But then when the opposition gets elected, that's not a part of God's plan. That's the devil at work. Another issue that the doctrine of religious restraint can help us with is with the hysteria surrounding Sharia law in the United States. Both of the communities, the Christian and the Islamic community, are advocating for laws based upon their religious beliefs. They end up at a standstill, and even more dangerous, they use the state to force a law that they don't agree with. The doctrine of religious restraint forces both sides to present secular reasons as to why these laws should exist. Muslims would have to argue why a set of Sharia laws would bring about some type of goodwill for all, while Christians would have to contend with not banning Sharia law because it's not Christian law. Another, my God is more right than your God scenario. Religious followers should also understand the conundrum when arguing about something using their religion. If both parties use their religious beliefs as justification, how can the conversation move forward without violence? One of the reasons why the United States has been so successful is that it has taken a secular stance, no state religion. So its citizens must persuade others without using an appeal to authority. It leads to better and more just laws for all. At the end of every argument, there just has to be some common ground. Reasoning grounded in religious views excludes those who do not believe and those who believe differently. A liberal democratic institution cannot survive with that mindset. The common ground we all need to have is some sort of reverence for the common good of our society, not just one's own salvation. A secular understanding leads one to respect another's beliefs as a personal journey, not as some universal standard. If one's religious beliefs intend to make everyone else follow their morality, then it is incompatible with our current form of governance. Using state to force your set of morality and codes of ethics based on religious beliefs ends up becoming a tyrannical institution. Now, more than ever, does America need to adopt and hold the doctrine of religious restraint as a concept. It is the fundamental fabric of our society. How can we build a nation of common good if one's concept of common good is only for themselves?